Mia stood at the edge of the lot, her heart racing as she gazed at the ruins where their family home had once stood. The air around her was thick with dust, the remnants of what had been a place of memories, laughter, and love. Now, it was nothing but debris, a cruel, silent testament to the destruction of everything she had ever known. Her eyes burned, not just from the stinging dust, but from the betrayal that clawed at her chest. "How could you?" she screamed, her voice cracking through the silence, her words echoing in the empty space. She wasn't sure if she was asking Jordan, the man she had spent 20 years building a life with, or the universe itself, for the cruelty of it all. Jordan stood there, as casual as ever, leaning against his BMW, sipping from a Starbucks cup like he hadn't just torn their world apart. He glanced up at her with that infuriatingly indifferent look that used to be so familiar but now felt like a mask for something far darker. "Oh, hey, babe," he said flatly, almost as if nothing was wrong, as if he hadn't just demolished the foundation of her entire life. His tone was almost dismissive, like he hadn't just erased every last trace of the home they had built together. Mia's hands trembled, and she took a step forward, her breath hitching as her eyes scanned the wreckage. "What the hell is this? You destroyed everything. Why?" The words came out in a rush, each one more painful than the last. How could he have done this without telling her? How could he be so heartless? Jordan took another sip of his drink, his eyes never leaving the screen of his phone as he shrugged. "While you were off finding yourself at that retreat, I decided to take care of a little house project for us," he said nonchalantly, as if talking about upgrading the kitchen or getting a new coat of paint. His words made Mia feel like she was drowning in a sea of disbelief. "House project," she spat, her voice rising with every word. "This was our home, Jordan. Our life. Our family's history. You just tore it down like it was nothing." He finally looked up from his phone, his face hardening as he stepped toward her. "Eliza," he said, her real name slipping out like a reprimand, "that old place was falling apart anyway. We could use your inheritance money to build something new, something better." His words hit Mia like a punch to the gut, and the last bit of hope she had for him died in that moment. The greed in his voice, the entitlement, it was all so clear now. He wasn't just interested in the house, he was after her future, her legacy. "My inheritance?" Mia's voice shook as the reality set in. Her mother's passing had left her a small fortune, but this wasn't just about money. This was about the destruction of everything she had worked for, everything she had loved. "You destroyed our family's history, my memories with my mother, just so you could get your hands on my money?" Jordan's face twisted into a sneer. "It's our money, Mia," he snapped, the anger in his voice rising. "I'm tired of you keeping everything separate. The inheritance, your savings, your little secret bank accounts. We're married, and I've given you everything, luxury cars, country club memberships, the kids' college funds." His voice faltered, but the bitterness remained. "You owe me." Mia's hands clenched into fists, her entire body shaking with a mix of fury and heartbreak. She had dedicated her life to this family, giving up her career, her dreams, all for them. And now this. Jordan, the man who had promised to love her, was nothing more than a greedy, selfish monster. "You supported this family because it's your responsibility, not some favor you did for me," she hissed, her voice breaking with the weight of years of resentment she had kept buried. "I was the one working long hours while you played golf with your CEO friends. You're not entitled to any of this." The silence between them was suffocating. For a brief moment, Jordan's eyes flashed with something, maybe guilt, maybe shame, but it disappeared as quickly as it came. He stepped toward her, his shadow falling over her, and Mia didn't flinch. She couldn't. She was done being afraid. "You'll regret this," Jordan growled as he turned away, heading back toward his car. "The inheritance is mine. You can make this easy or difficult, but either way, I'll get what I deserve." Mia stood alone amidst the rubble, the memories of her past life slowly being smothered under the weight of her reality. She felt like she was suffocating, but a fire, something fierce and unyielding, was beginning to burn within her. She would not let him take everything. Not this time. As the wind stirred the dust at her feet, Mia's resolve hardened. She wasn't going to be a victim anymore. She would fight for what was hers. The old Mia, the one who had always kept the peace, was gone. She grabbed a piece of drywall, still adorned with the height markings of her children, and she swore to herself. She would protect them. She would protect herself. This was just the beginning. With trembling hands, she pulled out her phone and dialed the one person she knew could help her. Claire, Mia's voice was steady now. I need the best divorce lawyer you know. I need to make him pay. Mia's fingers trembled as she ended the call with Claire. She stared at the cracked pavement beneath her feet, the weight of her decision settling heavily in her chest. The remnants of the home they had once built together seemed to mock her, what had once been a symbol of love, now a shattered foundation of betrayal. Her mind raced with everything Jordan had taken from her, but one thing she knew for certain, she wasn't going to let him steal her future too. She felt the sting of his last words echoing in her ears, "You owe me." Those words, dripping with entitlement, had haunted her since the moment he uttered them. But she knew something Jordan didn't. He underestimated her, and that was the biggest mistake he'd ever made. Mia took a deep breath, her body shaking, but not from fear. This was something new. Something fierce. She drove to Claire's office later that week, her heart pounding in her chest. The familiar sound of tires against pavement felt like the beat of a drum, each one getting louder, pushing her closer to the confrontation she was about to face. As she entered Claire's office, the scent of coffee and leather mixed with the cool, calm air. Claire was there, sitting behind her desk, surrounded by stacks of legal papers and files. She was everything Mia needed right now, a rock, someone who wouldn't back down. "Ready?" Claire asked, her voice calm but filled with quiet intensity. Mia nodded, taking a seat. She felt a strange calm wash over her as she gazed at Claire, who was already flipping through papers. The thought of facing Jordan in a courtroom, fighting for everything she had worked for, made her blood run cold. But she wasn't backing down this time. Not for him. Not for anyone. This wasn't just a fight for money or possessions, it was a fight for her dignity, for her children, for everything that Jordan had so carelessly trampled on. Claire raised her eyes from the papers. "We're going to make him regret what he did, Mia," she said, the determination in her voice unwavering. Mia exhaled, a shaky breath escaping her lips. "I don't even recognize him anymore. The man I married, the man I trusted, he's gone. All I see now is someone desperate to take everything from me. He doesn't even care about our family. Not anymore." Claire's eyes softened with empathy, but there was no trace of pity. "That's exactly why we're going to fight him, Mia. He wants to break you, but you're stronger than he thinks. You've been holding on to your life for far too long. It's time to take it back." Mia's heart pounded with a rush of emotion. It had been a long time since anyone had spoken to her like this, with such conviction. The last few years had dulled her sense of power, drowning her in a sea of self-doubt and resignation. But now, with Claire's guidance, Mia felt something stir inside her, a spark of the woman she used to be. The woman who wouldn't let anyone walk all over her. "Okay," Mia said, her voice steady now. "Let's do this." Over the next few weeks, Mia did everything Claire asked her to do. They gathered evidence, bank statements, text messages, emails, every little detail that could expose Jordan for what he truly was. Claire meticulously crafted a plan, one that would make Jordan's threats and manipulation backfire. They had to ensure that Mia wouldn't just win the financial battle, but that Jordan would be held accountable for the emotional abuse he'd put her through for years. Claire had a way of making Mia see things clearly. She wasn't just a victim. She was a woman with rights, with strength, and with an undeniable will to protect what was hers. With every document they unearthed, every phone call they made, Mia's resolve grew stronger. But there was still one thing Mia had to do. Jordan had no idea Mia was preparing to fight back, and Claire suggested they use that to their advantage. They'd set a trap, get Jordan to meet them, thinking Mia was willing to negotiate. But this would be no ordinary meeting. Claire would secretly record the conversation. If Jordan wanted to make empty threats, if he thought he could scare Mia into giving him what he wanted, they would have it all on tape. The proof would be undeniable. Mia hesitated at first. The thought of facing Jordan in person again after everything felt suffocating. But she had no choice. This was the only way. The day of the meeting arrived. Mia's heart raced as she walked into the cafe where she was supposed to meet Jordan. It was a quiet place, tucked away from the prying eyes of the world, and the perfect spot for what was about to happen. She sat in a corner booth, her back to the wall, her hands folded neatly in front of her. Her phone was positioned discreetly on the table, recording. A few minutes passed before Jordan walked in, his arrogant stride betraying his usual smug confidence. He didn't even glance in her direction as he approached, too busy checking his phone. He took a seat across from Mia, his face a picture of feigned calm. Well, Mia, he said, his voice laced with mock sincerity. I'm glad we could finally meet like adults. No drama, no fighting, just a little chat. Mia's gaze never wavered as she looked at him, her face cold and composed. Let's get straight to it, Jordan. I'm not here for a chat. We both know why we're here. Jordan's lips curled into a thin smile, but his eyes narrowed as he leaned forward. Of course. You've been holding out on me for too long. But don't worry. I'm a reasonable man. I'll take care of things, and we'll split everything fairly. All I need is your signature on the dotted line, and everything will be smooth sailing. Mia felt her blood run cold. He was playing the part of the nice guy, the man who could charm his way out of anything. But Mia wasn't buying it anymore. She wasn't the same woman who had stood by him all those years ago, blindly trusting him. No, she said, her voice firm. It's not going to be that easy, Jordan. He leaned back in his seat, a look of disbelief crossing his face. What are you talking about? This is the best deal you're going to get. You think you can walk away with everything? You think the judge is going to side with you? Don't make me laugh. Mia's heart pounded in her chest, but her voice remained steady. I don't need you to tell me what the judge will or won't do. I've already made my decision. The tension in the air thickened, and for a brief moment, Jordan's expression faltered. Mia could see the flicker of fear behind his eyes. He was realizing something, Mia wasn't going to back down this time. She had nothing left to lose, and everything to gain. You're making a huge mistake, he spat, his tone turning darker. You're not going to get away with this. I'll make sure of it. Mia held his gaze, unwavering. I'll make sure of it, Jordan. The meeting ended with Jordan storming out of the cafe, his threats echoing in the quiet aftermath. Mia's hands were trembling, but it wasn't from fear. It was from the realization that she had just taken control of her life once again. The pieces were falling into place, and the battle was far from over. But Mia knew one thing for sure, she wasn't going to let Jordan win. Not this time. Mia's fingers hovered over her phone, the words she had just spoken still hanging in the air. She had made her decision, no turning back. Jordan was wrong if he thought he could manipulate her into submission, if he thought he could simply walk away with everything that belonged to her. She wasn't the scared, passive woman she had been for the past 2 decades. No, the woman sitting in that cafe, her eyes burning with defiance, was ready for war. And Jordan had no idea what he had just walked into. The weeks following the meeting were a blur of activity. Clare had been nothing short of a strategic mastermind, orchestrating every move with precision. Mia dove into a world of documents, bank records, and phone logs, uncovering the layers of deceit Jordan had wrapped himself in. Every text message, every email, was a piece of the puzzle. Clare encouraged her to dig deeper, to pull at the threads of his lies until they unraveled completely. Mia spent long nights going through her files, holding on to the overwhelming sense of purpose that had taken root in her heart. Jordan had done his best to isolate her, to make her feel small, like she owed him everything. But Mia could see through the fog now. She wasn't going to let him get away with it. It was during one of those sleepless nights that Claire called her with an idea. "We need to use the meeting against him," Claire said, her voice tight with focus. "I want to set a trap. We can't let him think for a second that he's in control of this." Mia hesitated, her mind racing. The thought of facing Jordan again, the man who had once been her partner, her love, made her stomach churn. But Claire's words cut through her doubt like a knife. Jordan had crossed a line. And now, Mia wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for her children, for her dignity, for everything he had tried to take from her. The plan was simple: they would lure Jordan into one more meeting, this time under the pretense of working things out. But what he didn't know was that Claire would be there, recording every word, capturing every threat, every ounce of manipulation. Jordan had always thought he could talk his way out of everything, but this time, Mia wasn't going to let him. This time, he would expose himself for who he really was. Mia's heart hammered in her chest the day of the meeting. She arrived early, her nerves like a live wire under her skin. The cafe was quiet, tucked away from the world, just as they had planned. She took a seat at a corner booth, her eyes scanning the room as she set her phone down on the table. It was cleverly hidden beneath a napkin, recording everything in plain sight. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with the crisp scent of the morning air, but Mia's mind was miles away, her thoughts focused entirely on what was about to unfold. Minutes later, Jordan strode into the cafe, his usual confident swagger filling the space. Mia's stomach twisted at the sight of him. How could someone who had once meant so much to her become this? His eyes landed on her, his lips curling into a mock smile as he approached. "Nice to see you, Mia. Finally, we can have a civilized conversation," he said, taking a seat across from her with that same casual arrogance that always made her blood boil. Mia didn't respond immediately. She didn't need to. She could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy, as they both sized each other up. She had to resist the urge to let her emotions get the best of her. This wasn't about what Jordan wanted, it was about making him face the truth. "I thought you'd be more cooperative by now," Jordan continued, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "You've got to know that this is for the best, right? I'm just trying to make things easier. We've been through enough. A clean break would benefit us both." Mia's heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady, calm. "What you're really asking for, Jordan, is control. You want my inheritance. You want everything I've worked for. And you think I'll just hand it over because you said so?" Jordan's smile faltered for just a second, but he quickly regained his composure. "It's not like that, Mia. I'm looking out for us. For our future. We can start fresh. Think about it." She leaned forward, her eyes never leaving his. "You've been looking out for yourself, Jordan. And I'm done pretending I don't see it." She paused, watching his face carefully for any sign of guilt, but there was none. He was too far gone. Too consumed by his own selfish desires. Jordan scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "You think you're so righteous, don't you? You really think you're better than me? You're nothing without me, Mia. Nothing. I gave you everything, this life, this family. And now you want to take it all and walk away. You think I'm just going to let you do that?" Mia's breath caught, but she didn't flinch. Not this time. She wasn't going to let him scare her. "No, Jordan. I'm taking back what's mine. What you've stolen from me. You've destroyed our home, our family. You've taken advantage of me for years, and I'm done." His eyes flashed with anger, but he quickly masked it with a cold smile. "You're making a huge mistake. You don't know what you're up against. If you want to fight me, fine. But don't expect me to play nice. I will make you regret this, Mia. I'll take everything you've got." The venom in his words was thick, but Mia felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: power. She wasn't afraid anymore. She had something Jordan didn't: the truth. And the truth was about to break him. "I'm not afraid of you, Jordan," she said, her voice low and unwavering. "You don't scare me anymore. The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Jordan's fists clenched at his sides, but Mia didn't back down. She could hear her heart pounding in her chest, but her resolve was stronger than ever. She had done it. She had stood up to him. And in that moment, she knew that no matter what came next, she was ready. Claire was waiting for her on the other side of the room, and Mia couldn't help but feel a surge of triumph as she made her way out of the cafe, the weight of her decision finally lifting off her shoulders. Jordan had made one last attempt to break her, but it was too late. The battle was far from over, but Mia knew one thing for certain: she wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for her children. For her future. And no one, not even Jordan, could take that away from her. The courtroom was a stark contrast to the chaos that had ruled Mia's life for so long. The polished floors gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, and the silence was almost suffocating. She sat at the defendant's table, her hands folded in her lap, her breath slow and steady. This was it, the moment that would define everything she had fought for. Across from her, Jordan sat in his usual smug posture, his sharp suit an attempt to maintain the air of superiority he had carried with him throughout their marriage. But there was something different about him today. The cocky smile that used to infuriate her was gone, replaced by the tightness around his jaw, the flicker of unease in his eyes. His empire of lies was crumbling before him, and he knew it. The judge, a woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, took her seat. Mia felt the weight of the woman's gaze as she glanced over at her, a subtle but unspoken recognition of the strength it had taken for Mia to get to this point. The sound of the gavel falling was like a signal, ushering in the moment when all of the years of abuse, manipulation, and deceit would be laid bare. Mia's heart beat loudly in her chest as Claire began speaking. Her lawyer's voice was calm, measured, perfectly in control, like she always was. "Your Honor," Claire said, standing tall as she addressed the judge, "we are here today to present a case of financial coercion, emotional abuse, and manipulation. My client, Mia Miller, has been subjected to years of control by her husband, Jordan Miller, and has been denied agency over her own financial future." Mia barely registered the words at first. She was still lost in the weight of everything that had led her here, the nights of sleepless worry, the quiet desperation she'd felt when Jordan had shattered her world. But now, in this moment, her resolve was stronger than it had ever been. Jordan's lies, his manipulation, they didn't matter anymore. The truth would speak for itself. Claire continued, laying out their case methodically. She spoke of the house Jordan had destroyed, the financial records they had uncovered showing how he had drained their accounts, using Mia's inheritance to fund his own luxuries while Mia had been left in the dark. It was all there, undeniable proof of the man Jordan truly was. Mia watched Jordan's face closely. His usual bravado had cracked. She saw his fingers twitch nervously on the table, his once confident posture now a shell of his former self. His eyes flicked from the judge to Claire, then back to Mia. For the first time, he didn't have the upper hand. The ground was slipping out from under him, and he could feel it. When it was Jordan's turn to speak, his voice came out low and shaky, not at all the commanding tone he had used in the past. He tried to play the victim, claiming that he had done everything for their family, that he had been the one to carry the load while Mia had stayed home with the kids. He painted himself as the long-suffering provider, the man who had given everything to make their lives comfortable. But Mia wasn't buying it, not anymore. As he ranted, Mia felt something deep inside her shift. The anger she'd held for so long, the years of resentment that had built up, started to fade, replaced by something stronger, something better. She had come so far, endured so much, and in this moment, she could see the truth clearly. Jordan wasn't the man she had loved. He was a stranger, someone who had exploited her, manipulated her, and turned her own dreams into a nightmare. The moment Jordan finished speaking, Claire didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, presenting the key piece of evidence, the recordings from their meeting at the cafe. The tape was played through the courtroom speakers, and the room fell silent as Jordan's voice rang out, threatening Mia with his usual tactics of coercion and intimidation. His words were cruel, calculated, and raw. Every threat, every demand was captured. It was impossible to deny now. The man who had once promised to love and protect her had only been after one thing: control. Mia watched Jordan as the audio played, and she couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction. This was the moment she had been waiting for. His mask had been ripped off, and the world was seeing him for who he truly was. The judge listened attentively, her expression unreadable as she reviewed the evidence. Jordan shifted uncomfortably in his seat, the color draining from his face as the reality of the situation hit him. The things he had thought would remain hidden were now exposed. There was no way out for him. Claire turned to Mia, offering her a small, reassuring smile. "This is it," Claire whispered, her voice filled with confidence. "We've got him." And then, after what felt like an eternity, the judge spoke. In light of the evidence presented, she began, her voice steady and firm, "I hereby grant the petitioner, Mia Miller, full financial separation from her husband. All assets in question, including the inheritance, are to remain with Ms. Miller. Additionally, in consideration of documented emotional abuse, I am awarding full custody of the minor children to Ms. Miller." The gavel came down with a sharp crack, and Mia felt as though the weight of the world had been lifted off her shoulders. She wasn't just walking away with her financial independence, she was reclaiming her life, her dignity, and her future. For the first time in a long time, she felt free. As the courtroom slowly emptied, Jordan remained in his seat, seething with rage. His fists were clenched, and his jaw was tight, but there was nothing he could do. The law had spoken, and Mia had won. Outside the courthouse, Claire turned to Mia, her smile wide and genuine. "You did it," she said. "You took back control. He can't hurt you anymore." Mia nodded, the relief washing over her in waves. The battle had been long, but she had made it through. She had fought for her future, for her children, and for herself. And now, she could finally breathe. As they walked toward her car, Mia glanced over her shoulder at the courthouse. It was over. The last chapter had closed, and a new one was waiting for her. No more fear. No more doubt. Just the future, bright and full of possibilities. The sun was setting as she got into her car, the orange light spilling across the horizon. She was ready. She was free. And no one, not even Jordan, could take that away from her. The road ahead was uncertain, but Mia knew one thing: she would walk it with her head held high. She had won. And she wasn't looking back. The next few months felt like a whirlwind of change, each day marking a new step towards a future Mia had long forgotten was possible. The weight of the courtroom verdict had left her feeling lighter, but now she faced the task of rebuilding everything she had lost: the home, the stability, the trust. But as she stood in the middle of the empty lot where her house once stood, there was a sense of purpose in the air, something she hadn't felt in years. The ruins of the house weren't just a symbol of the past, they were now the foundation of her future. It felt surreal, standing there, the land before her offering a blank canvas. The promise of something new, something better, was finally within reach. And with Lucas and Sophie at her side, Mia knew this wasn't just about restoring a house. It was about creating a home again, a place where love, strength, and resilience could flourish. Mia had always dreamed of a space where her children could thrive, a home that was theirs, not tainted by the shadow of betrayal. She could already picture the rooms filled with laughter, the kitchen where they would all gather for dinner, the yard where they could play without fear of the past creeping in. The thought gave her the strength to press on, to move past the pain of what Jordan had taken from them. She had spent weeks meeting with contractors, architects, and designers, working tirelessly to make her vision a reality. It wasn't just a house she was building, it was a new life. Every choice, every decision, was a reflection of who she was becoming, a woman who no longer allowed anyone to dictate her worth. Mia was determined that this home would be a sanctuary, one that welcomed her children with open arms and embraced their futures without reservation. One morning, she stood in the middle of the lot, surveying the progress. The foundation had been poured, and the walls were beginning to take shape. Lucas and Sophie stood beside her, their faces filled with pride as they looked around at the space that would soon be theirs. "I can't believe this is happening," Sophie said, her voice full of wonder. "This place, it feels like home already." Mia smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. "It's going to be more than home, sweetheart. It's going to be our fresh start." Lucas, ever the quiet one, looked around thoughtfully before speaking. "I'm glad you didn't give up, Mom. I don't think I could have handled another year of everything the way it was." Mia's heart clenched at his words. She had tried so hard to protect them, to shield them from the chaos Jordan had caused. But now, with everything slowly falling into place, Mia felt an overwhelming sense of peace. She had done the right thing. For them, for herself. And for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of calm wash over her, like the storm had finally passed, and the sun was beginning to break through. The days turned into weeks, and soon the house was no longer just a vision in Mia's mind, it was becoming a reality. The walls were framed, the roof went up, and with each passing day, the house transformed into a beautiful, modern home. Every time she stepped inside, she felt a little more grounded, a little more confident. This was no longer a place of destruction. It was a place of creation, of new memories. One afternoon, Mia stood by the large windows, staring out at the yard where the kids would eventually run, where they'd play catch or have barbecues. The view was breathtaking. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over everything. As she looked around, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, hope. "Mom, we've got a visitor," Sophie called out, her voice pulling Mia from her thoughts. Mia turned to see Lucas walking towards her, a look of surprise on his face. "It's Clare," he said. "She's outside, and she looks, I don't know, like she's got big news." Mia's heart skipped a beat. Clare had been more than just a lawyer to her. She had been a friend, a mentor, and the rock that had held her steady through the worst of times. If Clare had news, it was bound to be important. Mia hurried outside, a smile already forming on her face. Clare was standing by her car, wearing her usual confident expression, but there was something different in her eyes, a spark of excitement, perhaps. "Clare, what's going on?" Mia asked as she approached. Clare grinned, her eyes twinkling. "I just got off the phone with the judge. I wanted to let you know that everything is officially finalized. The divorce papers are signed. The house is yours. The inheritance is yours. And Jordan, well, let's just say, he's not walking away with anything. His assets have been frozen, and all of his attempts to contest the ruling have been dismissed." Mia's breath caught in her throat. She had known the verdict was in her favor, but hearing it all confirmed, hearing that Jordan had no recourse left, filled her with a mix of relief and triumph. "So, it's really over," Mia whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Clare nodded, her smile widening. "It's really over, Mia. You've won. You've done more than just take back your life, you've created a future that's all yours. And trust me, he's not going to bother you anymore. He knows better now." Mia looked at Clare, then over her shoulder at the house being built behind her. She could feel the weight of the journey lifting, the burden of the past finally giving way to something brighter. "I never thought I'd be here," Mia said, her voice thick with emotion. "I never thought I'd be standing here, ready to start over. But now it feels like the first day of the rest of my life." Clare placed a hand on her shoulder, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "You did it, Mia. You fought for what was yours, and you won. Don't ever forget that strength. It's yours to keep." Later that evening, as Mia sat in the living room, surrounded by her children, the final pieces of the house began to fall into place. The walls were no longer just walls, they were her sanctuary. The floors beneath her feet weren't just floors, they were the foundation of her future. As she watched Lucas and Sophie talk about their plans for the future, a quiet contentment settled in Mia's heart. Everything she had been through, the pain, the heartbreak, the uncertainty, had led her to this moment. And as the sun set outside, casting its final rays over the house, Mia knew she had come full circle. She had weathered the storm, and now, with her children by her side, she was ready to build the life she had always deserved. This was just the beginning.